It's my pleasure now to introduce Joshua Tepper to speak about the HQO framework for quality improvement. And again, Joshua's biography is in the program, so I won't repeat it. But I do want to say personally thank you to Joshua for how supportive he has been personally and his organization in every way in supporting these CAHSPR conferences. So thank you, Joshua, and welcome.
Thanks so much, Frank, and it really, first of all, welcome from Health Quality Ontario, and it really is a great opportunity to partner with you yet again, and hopefully many more in the future. It's interesting because when you first sort of pitched this idea, and I want to give you full credit for the paper and the team for the paper and this idea, I was like, oh, regional health authorities, where does that really fit for us? But as I thought about it, it's actually a very important fit on the quality agenda. And it's often, I would argue, an overlooked piece. So typically, when you first say the word quality, you just typically think about quality improvement. You think of front lines. You think about working on wait times in an emergency room. You think about hand hygiene up on the ward. You think about a long-term care home, reducing falls and doing PDSA cycles. And so your first instinct is to go incredibly, and I think appropriately, front lines. And then you might back out and you sort of say, well, of course there's a role for government. We need to legislate a few things, regulate a few things, funding approval, and sort of some big picture government. And I actually think where we perhaps had a bit of a gap in the quality effort, sort of capital Q quality, is on this issue of the regional health authorities. And again, most parts of Canada, and in fact most parts of the world, are increasingly moving to some form of regionalization. We call it different things, we structure it differently, and then once we land it, we wait 6 months and try something new. Ontario went on like a record sort of 10 years almost before we threw uppers in the air. Alberta has taken a slightly more agile approach to revision. I do think it is a perfect fit, and I appreciate sort of Frank's vision about helping us have a conversation about quality. One of the interesting things, of course, about when you look at regional issues and you start getting away from provincial sort of approaches is this issue of variation. And at what point do we sort of have the appropriate tension, the appropriate recognition that especially in a place as big as Ontario, with a population as sort of ethnically diverse, geographically diverse, economically diverse, do you need a really good amount of variation? And where actually is that just leading to bad outcomes? Where, when you look at data that shows, a tenfold variation across LHINs, never mind at the facility level, for things like hysterectomy for non-malignancy. So if, a tenfold variation. When you look at things like admission rates for asthma for kids, the most common rate, 10, 20-fold variations. When you look at low-risk C-sections and rates anywhere between about 4% up to 38.5%. For low risk, across the province, like, where does that variation start? Do you actually say, well, we can't let the regions go just sort of all willy-nilly, because that's crazy. Like, that is just poor care. But on the other hand, when do you sort of recognize it? Boy, and I've delivered babies in Dryden, Ontario, and Atikokan, Ontario, which is a feat because we only deliver about 4 babies a year there, so I had to get it right. And when I deliver babies at Mount Sinai Hospital, about 1.25 kilometers away from here, like, those are just different worlds. Like, you couldn't be more different. There's never been a baby in distress at Mount Sinai Hospital because of the snow, right? But when you're in Dryden, you are absolutely in December and January making clinical decisions and variations in your care, thinking about, can I get a fixed wing, can I get a rotator wing into and out of Dryden in case of crisis to get to Winnipeg or Thunder Bay, right? And so absolutely we're going to have that. And so where do we find that balance? Where we think, though, we don't want a lot of variation is the starting point. Where I think we have wasted a lot of time is trying to come together with an agreement about what do we even mean on the topic of quality. Why do we have one hospital defining quality one way, different from another? Why do we have one LHIN saying, we believe in quality and this is what it means, and another LHIN saying, well, we believe much more than you, but this is what we mean, and this is how we're going to define it? So one of the things, and we thank Staney Brown for his leadership and many other capable people for their leadership, that we've done is we've launched an initiative called Quality Matters. And that's what's on the screen beside us. And what we've tried to do is say, we're going to have some variation. We're going to approach it in different ways for good reasons, but let's at least talk the same language and recognize that we're in the same starting point. And so after a fair amount of thought, what this committee of experts, and actually with the involvement of patients and caregivers and family members, through an initiative we called Quality Is, sort of said the first thing we need to do is we just need to adopt the Institute of Medicine's 6 dimensions of quality. Like, yes, we could get together for 3 more days of conference and quibble about whether the word should be timely or access, but let's not. Let's not. Let's just say that when we do plans for our hospital, when we do plans for our primary care, when we're a regional health authority and we want to give a framework, we're just going to say, we're going to call this dimension of quality to look at timeliness. Because when we do that, we know we're going to do what everybody else in the province is doing and looking at it. And we're going to make sure that we don't forget about things like equity. Because it's easy if we start making up our own definitions to have something fall through the cracks. And one of the things that often falls through the cracks after we worry about safety and patient-centeredness and timeliness is equity. So we're going to use a common starting point, and we're going to make sure that things like equity and efficiency are there up the top. And so, again, we didn't invent these. It's sort of a first for Ontario not to need to reinvent the wheel. And it'd be funny if it sort of wasn't true. We never say that. We're like, we have learned deeply from others, and we are going to make a made in Ontario adjustment. We're not, actually. We didn't take 3 off. We didn't add 10. We're just going with the 6. And then the next thing we sort of did is we need some core principles. We need some principles that regardless of your role in the healthcare system, patient, caregiver, provider, CEO, health manager, primary care, long-term care, home care, rehab, and everything that I've forgotten to mention in between, we should be guided by some certain beliefs. Beliefs that we do things in partnership with patients. Belief that quality improvement is inherently, and the active quality agenda is inherently an act of balance and balancing priorities. And you should never be doing just safety at the exclusion of any other dimension. You should never be focusing on access at the exclusion of all other dimensions. And we need a balance of priorities, and that is a principle. That we have to use our resources wisely. That the quality agenda is not an opportunity for another 10% increase in budgets, as much as we sort of like it to be, or at least at the HQO budget, we'd take that. But the point is we have to use our resources wisely, and quality improvement actually through the dimension of efficiency is an opportunity to see that and to see that opportunity. So again, these key principles and a few others. And then what we also said is this can only be the beginning of where we want to go. Can only be the start. We have these 6 dimensions so we can all talk about quality and mean quality in the same way. We've got some principles, so we're all sort of thinking about it and starting and focusing in the same way. But now we need to do a series of deep dives and figure out collectively what are some of the things we need to work on. And so we now are in the process of doing a series with patients, with caregivers, with experts from across the province and beyond the province, a series of white papers in a select number of areas that you see in the bottom of the screen. But at the end of the day, it is this concept, as we put down, of a just patient-centered health system committed to relentless improvement. And the regional health authorities, whatever you call them, wherever you are in the country, have an absolutely critical role to support the front lines and to help bring to life those sort of higher legislative regulatory things. And I think today is a wonderful opportunity to pursue that. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Joshua.